name is Christine Dyckman, and I am the Workforce Readiness Director for the Garden State Chapter Council of SHRM for New Jersey State. I am bringing to you LinkedIn Live events so that you can take the information, one or two tidbits, and incorporate them into your daily work activities. My goal is to help you learn a thing or two each time that we meet. Today's guest, Tom Glasscock. Tom is of Glasscock and Associates LLC. Tom is a project manager, change management leader. He concerns a lot of IT, loves learning and development, pretty much HR things. I mean, he's got certifications up the wazoo, all right? If you're in HR, you know what these all mean. He has an SHRM SPH. He has SPR. I'm so sorry. He has a global PHR. He has DISC management. He has Myers-Briggs management 1 and 2. I mean, it just goes on and on forever. He is a smart guy. If you need to know anything about IT, but especially AI, Tom is your guy. He can help you to be able to push that button a little bit further. So thank you so much for coming, Tom. I appreciate it. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Christine, for having me today. I appreciate it. What I'll be doing with a lot of this presentation, I'll be going through some slides very quickly. So here's my background. I'm not going to read through this. What you need to know about me is that I work in training management or training development and delivery and communications for large-scale implementations, specifically around Workday. So I do training, I develop the training, I develop the communications, deliver them. About a year ago, a little over a year and a half now, I started hearing about ChatGPT, and what I heard was college students writing their term papers, sort of cheating. And I thought, well, it's a passing interest. But then I started fooling around with it. And what I found was I went into ChatGPT and I thought, well, I'll ask it to do something very esoteric. Now, Workday is maybe a household name for many HR people, but not a lot of people. So sort of a niche, sort of an area or domain. Then I asked it even something more specific. I asked it to write out the instructions for uploading an EIB, Enterprise Interface Builder. Now, there are probably about 20,000 people on the planet that would be interested in that, if 20K. Doubt. So
really, 20,000 on the planet? That doesn't seem like very many.
I was trying to be as specific as possible. I said, write out the instructions to do this thing. And ChatGPT, in its creepy little way, like there's somebody else on the line, started typing back number 1, number 2, number 3, and it was pretty much right. And I thought to myself, this technology is going to probably replace me within 3 to 5 years. Now, I was wrong. It's probably going to replace what I do in 1 to 2 years now. This is just moving so fast.
That's kind of scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little bit.
Up and yeah.
It is. So I decided I need to get busy and understand how this thing worked. My jam or my wheelhouse, whatever you want to call it, has been helping people, particularly HR folks, understand how to use technology and how to do smart things with it, how to make their jobs easier. And it really appeared to me that this is where I could add some value. What I'm trying to do right now is just get the word out to people in HR. I've done several presentations at the Garden State SHRM Council annual presentation. I've done that 3 times in a row. I was out in San Diego last year presenting to the ACMP, the Association of Change Management Professionals. I also presented recently at the Jersey Shore SHRM chapter on AI, similar to this, but this presentation has been specifically tailored for this audience. So I'm hoping I can count on your flexibility and patience if we run into kind of glitches. I'm going to try some new things here today, but that's what you need to know about me. So what we'll be covering today is how did we get here? What are some of the key events in AI? I'll be breezing through some of these slides. Don't worry, it'll all be in a packet. We'll be circulating later. I'll talk about some things you need to know about generative AI versus ChatGPT. Now, I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. I'm going to be very loose. I don't see the need to be specific. it's sort of pedantic to try to make a difference between those two terms. And for this audience, let me talk about what's going on now, and we'll talk about how you can use generative AI on the job. We'll talk about what's next, and we'll have some closing thoughts and then an open Q&A. I will also be stopping at various points to ask if anyone has questions. If you do have questions, feel free to put them into the chat. And we'll see. I'll do my best to get to them. Any questions that I don't get to or that I can't answer immediately, I will find out for you and get back to you.
Is an hour enough to cover all of this stuff, Tom? I mean, it sounds like there's so much, and so many people are writing just snippets of AI about it. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like enough.
It's not. I could go on all day, or I could go on for days about this stuff, but I'll do my best to move quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, key events in AI. Again, I'm going to breeze through these things really quickly, but it's just a couple of things. One of the things I want to talk about is this cultural influence that the media has had, or movies, literature, what's on TV has had on us. The first movie that was made about AI was 1927, a silent movie called Metropolis. Scientist invents a robot, goes amok, starts killing people.
Sounds like Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. Actually, Frankenstein is maybe an earlier example, even from medieval Jewish folklore. The Golem is another example of something gone wrong with a sentient being, something that becomes sentient. So Alan Turing, you might be familiar with him. He came up with the test on the Turing test for AI. But in the 1950s, they first came up with the terms of artificial intelligence and garbage in, garbage out. And then, of course, you have all these series that featured AI. I'm going to move along quickly again. In the early 80s, we had all these great movies. OpenAI was founded in 2015. In June, ChatGPT-3 was released.
Wait, I'm sorry, Tom. You said 2015 it was founded, but here it is 2024, and we're really just, 2023, we're just really hearing about it. How is that even possible?
Well, it's one of the points that really that I wanted to make. It really hasn't been on anybody's radar until November 2022, when they released 3.5.
Right.
It reached 1 million users in 5 days. That's more than LinkedIn and Facebook, than TikTok, any other platform you can name. The growth has just been explosive of this use. And I think recently, it was touting, 200 million users.
Wow. Wow.
But a lot of money has gone into this, a lot of lawsuits and regulations happening. The updates keep on coming. And of course, the movies do too. Again, you can go back to this in the package. I didn't mean to deprive you of any kind of benefit of what I just covered. But basically, there are 4 areas I'm talking about culturally. What we've seen in the movies, on TV, literature, always depicts an existential conflict between humankind and machines. You can't have a good story without a protagonist and an antagonist. And by the way, while it always seems like dark days for humans, those movies usually end pretty well for the humans. We survive, we get by. Legally, the lawyers have gotten involved, and so have the regulators from the White House on down. The EU has also moved swiftly, and lawsuits over intellectual property have been filed, from the New York Times to Sarah Silverman to J.R.R. Martin, who wrote, I'm blocking on the name, House of Dragons, that series. Technically, this stuff is just evolving at a breakneck pace. It's phenomenal. And financially, this is a caveat. A lot of money has gone into this. A lot of money. People are buying these chips from NVIDIA at record prices. That's why their stock hit a new high. Just this, I think it was just yesterday. They eclipsed both Apple and Microsoft as the most valuable company by market cap.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yep. Now, how it's going to produce returns is still unclear, at least to me. So watch this space, right? So here's some fundamental concepts I think everybody needs to know. There are basically 3 components of generative AI. They are, just gonna get my laser pointer up here, hardware. So these are the data storage, the processing chips, that kind of stuff. The data, this all comes mostly from the internet. And then the algorithms or the software. Those are the instructions that the AI uses to interpret the data. And of course, it runs on the hardware. So those are basically the 3 components.
I'm not really tech savvy, Tom. So I can kind of know what all this means. You are going to explain this to us, right? Because I'm like, woo, over my head here.
Okay, well, it's sort of like, let's see, if I was in the kitchen, I mean, I'm a cook. I like to
Yeah.
cook. I'm not just
Okay.
saying that.
We all cook.
I think everybody knows this is basic something that basic
Yeah.
task that most people can relate to. So the hardware, your tools, your mixing bowl, your mixer, your oven,
Okay.
the stuff you use to cook or to bake. The
Mhm.
data are your ingredients, the eggs, the flour, the
Oh, okay.
yeast, and then the algorithms. Those are the instructions. Fold in the milk, um,
Oh, okay. Okay.
preheat the oven to 400. Those
Very
that kind
interesting.
of thing. Oh, good question. Some terms you may have heard batted around: generative pre-trained transformer, that's GPT. Hallucination, you probably heard of this. This is where AI is making stuff up, like
Yes.
straight up just inventing things, which is a little crazy because you wouldn't think it would do that. It's also a little crazy because they aren't quite sure why it's doing it. I'm not going to get into that. Another important thing, HITL. I don't like this term, human in the loop, but it's very, very important. You always have to have a person involved. You can't just crank something out of the AI or ChatGPT and expect somebody to read it. You need to look at it. You need to verify it. Even when you verify it, sometimes people gotten in trouble over
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
LLM, large language model. This is a type of AI that's been trained on a lot of data. Natural language processing. This is basically voice recognition plus, because the AI is doing is it's interpreting, it's guessing at your meaning when you speak to it or when you type something out. Machine learning. This is how computers can learn new things. Machine learning bias. This is where the algorithms isn't really particularly biased by itself, but the data that it's picking up is. Okay, so there's bias and there's misinformation and disinformation and the information that these tools have scooped up into their LLMs, and you need to watch out for that. Again, a human in the loop. I can't stress that enough. Multimodal, that's a term that's been batted around recently. All that means is it's to the AI, it's all data, whether it's a movie, a picture, a text. It's all just bits and bytes. Multimodal means that ChatGPT started out as a chat, and now you can go into it and ask it to create a picture. Actually, I produced one using
Yes.
just the other day for this
Mhm.
presentation. We'll see that in a couple minutes. So I'm going to stop there before we get into the next set of slides. Are there any questions, Christine? I can't see.
There a question.
Okay.
I know that again, a lot has been written about AI, the pros, the cons, the good, the bad, the ugly, what have you. And we talked just in your last slide about humans being in the loop, and then fact checking and hallucinations and that kind of thing. So the question posed from Terrence is, under key events, how are you appearing in the early 2000s? Their pros and their cons. And a lot has been written about them too. How's that working?
In the early 2000s, I'm not sure I understand the question.
I know that lawsuits are active
Yes.
for so pros, cons, what's going on with that? Like, how are they going to be able to move forward? Is that going to be impactful to HireVue or to a job seeker or to people using the HireVue software? How's that going to play out?
For HireVue specifically, I doubt there'll be any impact. That's a very narrowly or a specific focus. When I talk about the lawsuits, though, for example, the New York Times has sued OpenAI, alleging that they inappropriately appropriated or used their content without their permission. So what's got to happen is a court has to take a look at this. I'm not sure if that'd be educated by a judge or a jury, but somebody's got to look into that. Sarah Silverman, who's a comedian, had wrote a book, and she claimed that that OpenAI had lifted entire passages from her book, and those have been used in the answers that ChatGPT had produced for some people. And she took offense at that, so she sued them. Now that lawsuit has since been partially dismissed, but not completely. There are a bunch of people. I think I referred to earlier the folks, John Grisham, J.R.R. Martin, who have famous authors who are suing because they feel that the OpenAI has inappropriately used their information in the production of its product. essentially responses to queries.
Is that why we need a human in the loop to make sure it's not infringing on those copyrighted actions and materials?
You do need to be careful as a user. So there are two things you need to be careful of, and I talk about this in a little bit. Number one,
I'm sorry, I'm going
no,
ahead.
it's okay. We'll get to it. These are good questions. The two things you need to be careful about: IP, intellectual property. One, you need to make sure that you're safeguarding your own IP, right? Some Samsung engineers, I think it was early last year, uploaded some information. I think they were doing some coding, and they inadvertently, without realizing it, released that code into the wild, so to speak. So it suddenly became public domain. Samsung, about 2 days later, shut down access to ChatGPT for all its employees, right?
Wow.
So there's those kinds of things can happen. So you need to be careful about the IP, your IP. You need to safeguard that and be careful what you upload to ChatGPT. Second thing is you need to respect the IP of others. If there's something that comes out, or again, human in the loop, don't just copy and paste out of ChatGPT. I rarely find it useful at the first pass myself. So you always ought to take a very close look at it, and see if you think that you may be violating somebody else's copyrights or intellectual property, abusing it.
Okay. All right.
So consider the calculator, right? Everybody's seen one of these. Is this an example of AI? So Christine, maybe you can tell me if people are putting into the chat yes or no, or not sure.
Not yet. Not yet. Hello, everyone. That's about it.
Oh, wake up.
No, but I do use a calculator, and I forget that I have a calculator on my phone. So sometimes I'll use my phone, but most of the time I just use the desk one because it's right there in front of my face.
So this works well in person, this example. I don't know how well it's going to work on Zoom, but let's try it. So I'm going to turn on my calculator, and I want all of you, without using your calculator or your phone, tell me how much is 2 times 2. And you probably came up with the same answer I did at about the same speed I did, 4, right? So the answer is 4. Okay, let's try 37.5 divided by 6.23. I got my answer. How about you? Oh, you don't have it yet. I gave this example the other day to the judge's firm, and somebody actually gave me the answer. It was a simpler problem, but they actually did the math in their head, long division.
I have somebody that said calculator is not AI, and I have somebody that says yes, it's a form of AI.
Okay.
So I can't wait to hear what your position is.
This is not going to learn anything. Okay. It's always going to give you the same result every time, very consistently, like AI, right? It's going to do some things, which leads us to the next slide. It's going to do some things as well as you can. 2 plus 2, 2 times 2, right? It's going to do some things that you can't do as quickly or as effectively or as efficiently, like 37.5 divided by 6.23. So no, the answer is no, it is not AI, but it's also a useful analogy, because when these things first came out, there was a lot of controversy in the educational system about should we allow students to use them.
I've heard it as a parent. I don't know if everyone else has, but I know that I've heard it.
So I think the compromise we came up with was show your work, right?
Yes.
So that was the workaround. So now I think somebody had told me recently, I don't have kids myself, but you're almost required to have a calculator, not only allowed, but almost required to have them handy during the SATs.
Yes.
That's how pervasive they have become. They also become a lesson for the future. And we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. So there's some things, as I was saying, humans are good at, and that humans are bad at. And similarly, that AI is good at, and that AI is bad at. Humans are good at maintaining relationships, empathy, and compassion, ethics. AI doesn't have any ethics. They are building in some guardrails. This is called alignment, is the term that's used, alignment of goals. They don't have any kind of context. Well, people do. So they're good at asking questions to some extent. They have a potential for proactivity to some extent. What people are bad at, they get tired, they need to rest, they make mistakes, they're biased, right? You can become overwhelmed, and you might get cranky if you get asked to make too many changes, right? We've all experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
AI is good at vast and fast, rapidly churning through a lot of data. It doesn't sleep. It never gets tired. It's available 24/7. It's really good at synthesizing information from all these disparate sources. It's good at following instructions with extreme consistency. And it doesn't complain about a revision or rework. However, it can produce fabricated information. It's not really lying, because lying goes to intent. It's just making stuff up. It's not purposely trying to deceive you. It's trying to.
How is that okay? I don't understand.
There's no malicious intent behind it, right?
I don't know if my boss would say, well, it's okay. You just made stuff up because you just didn't
Human
know.
in the loop. Human in the loop. Citing source material and explaining how it's not really good at this either, although it's getting better.
Right.
And it doesn't ask or even wonder why you're asking this question. It's never going to ask you, why do you ask?
Right.
The day that happens, I'm going to be very worried.
Yeah.
And it is completely reactive. AI is not going to wake up in the middle of the night and say, hey, I got this great idea for this question you asked me the other day. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
So Picasso, of all people, said that computers are useless. They can only give you answers, right? It's the questions that matter. And here's a great example. This is a really old joke, probably goes back to the vaudeville days, early 1900s. Guy's walking along in a park. He comes across a man with a dog. He says to the man, does your dog bite? The man on the bench says, no. The guy reaches down to pet the dog. The dog bites him. And the guy screams, why did you tell me your dog just bit me? Why did you tell me your dog doesn't bite? The guy says, that's not my dog. Pause for effect. So I hope you're laughing at that, but it does show you've got to ask the right questions. These two illustrations, by the way, were created by Max Spruth, who works with me. He's one of my research assistants, a senior research assistant, I should say. He did these using Midjourney. This picture was entirely composed by a text prompt. Okay.
Wow. That's incredible that the picture was composed by a text prompt.
Yep.
That's amazing.
So how can I use AI on the job? Well, you can do a bunch of different things, but first you got to get started. So this is an image that came to mind that I created 2 days ago using DALL-E, which is like Midjourney. It's another image generator. Again, from text to a picture, multimodal, right? I could have uploaded a picture and said, modify this a little bit to look a certain way. But you can basically ask ChatGPT anything. Is there a God? What's the meaning of life? What should I have for dinner? Give me a recipe for cornbread that doesn't include sugar. So you can ask it anything. And that is part of why I put this thing up with a blank page. Sometimes you have to figure out what is the question? How do I ask the question? So I also asked these 4 AIs or GPTs, ChatGPT-4, Gemini, which is the Google product, Copilot, which is Microsoft, and Claude, which is Anthropic, which you might not have heard of. But I said, how can HR use generative AI? That was the question I asked. And these are the responses that I got, each of them. Now you'll notice there's some differences, right?
Yes.
Can anybody spot what's missing? And I'll give you 30 seconds for that. There are 2 things that I noticed that are noticeable by their absence, noteworthy by their absence.
For HR?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see training.
Onboarding and training.
Oh, training right there. Thank you.
Personalized training content.
Benefits? Is benefits on
Good
there?
one. Benefits. What goes hand in hand with benefits?
Good, because I have a question about that. Being in HR, I'm like, could I use it for this? Could I use it for that? So I do have a few questions, but spotting AI generated resumes is one of the comments.
So that would fall under, I think, recruitment, talent acquisition. Okay. That could be a subset of some part of that. The other piece that I thought was interesting that I missed was compensation.
Compensation. Okay. And
now,
I'm reading so many articles about being able to use compensation or get answers about it, but That doesn't say
So
that.
you can. So again, another example, human in the loop. Okay, here's the answer I got. Am I just going to cut and paste this into a report or presentation as my outline? Well, I'm going to be missing a couple of things, and my boss or his boss or her boss, so on up the line, might say, "Hey, where's Comp and Ben?" You're going to feel kind
Right.
of foolish. So just you got to take everything it tells you with a grain of salt. These are the answers straight out of these 4 platforms that I got.
Are they the only 4 platforms that we can use or
Oh
should
no,
use for
there
HR, or
are
there even more than what you're
there
showing? These are just
there
the
are
top
more
4.
than, and there are more every day. I can't keep track of all this stuff.
Okay. Yeah,
Perplexity is a
exactly.
good
There are
one.
just so many. I know that we talk and hear about all the time Chat GPT, all the time. Every article has that in there. Is that the easiest one to learn before you venture into the other ones, or not necessarily?
That's a really nice segue. So let's try to jump into.
Sorry,
No,
I'm doing
no,
it again.
okay. So everybody should be able to see now my Safari browser.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, does anybody have a favorite movie franchise?
Just put it in the chat box and I will relay that information. There might be a delay.
Any answers yet?
Is it really that easy? Create a synopsis for a new movie? Is it that easy? I can be a screenwriter? Lord of the Rings, I have. Lord of the Rings. Thank you.
Very good. Good one. So you'll notice what I was doing there. I didn't cut and paste. I could have, but I wanted to kind of demonstrate, this is what you go through. So this is ChatGPT, just a real quick, chatgpt.com is, I've got an account. Here's me logged in. You don't have to have an account to use it. You can explore. Well, I'm not going to. I won't go into that. So you can see that I've done some research on Summarize HR Business Partners, some other things that I've done the previous 7 days, the past month, or back in January. So let's complete our question here. And I just hit enter, or I can hit the up arrow. So it's creating a new movie. This is a synopsis for a new movie, Shadows of Numenor.
So if screenwriters are having a problem, they just use ChatGPT and they can come up with ideas.
This is one of the things that the screenwriter strike was about. And then the actors joined them because they're also concerned about their likenesses being used without their permission and essentially being put out of a job.
Yes.
Scarlett Johansson just had a big problem with OpenAI. I'm not sure if she filed a suit or whether they mollified her with their explanation. They approached her about using her voice. She was actually the voice in a movie called Her, which is back in 2013 with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes.
And they wanted to use her voice. She said no. And lo and behold, they came out with this voice that sounded a lot like Scarlett Johansson. And her family was calling her up and say, "Hey, did you give them permission to do this?" And she said no. And hilarity and slapstick ensued. So there we go. So this is, you can see there's a whole sort of synopsis of a particular movie. Now, I use this because this is something everybody could relate to. A movie. You could ask more specific questions. I'm mindful of the time. We're at the bottom of the hour, and I want to leave some time for some more questions. But that's what you can use ChatGPT, an example of the kinds of things you can do with it, and also just a view on sort of the window and how to get there. Right, ChatGPT.com. You don't need an account, and you can opt to use older versions. ChatGPT, I think, stopped in September of 2020, 21. ChatGPT, and then they got cute ChatGPT 4o. That's a smaller case O, is what that is. So I think somebody was having a little fun. So what can recruiting do? I understand there were going to be a lot of recruiters here today. So you can improve your candidate experience in sourcing, acquisition, and onboarding. You can provide them with a personalized assistant. Think of a chatbot on steroids. If you remember Clippy, if any of you are old enough to remember him or using him, or it, I guess, it was kind of annoying. It would pop up when you're typing something. It says, "Looks like you're trying to write a resume. Would you like some help?" It was annoying as hell and not really very helpful.
Okay.
What generative AI has now done is has put that sort of model in on steroids. It's amplified it. It's made it much more useful. You can create job descriptions. For example, I did an exercise the other day where I uploaded 3 job descriptions from different companies. I just pulled them off of Indeed. I put them in a PDF and uploaded them into ChatGPT. And I said, please analyze these 3 job ads, create a common format, and then rewrite them in that format. And it did it in under 5 minutes. Now, a lot of recruiters I've worked with, the large companies, they have to deal with all sorts of different formats. Sometimes they have a template that they can use, but managers typically being human, will do their own thing. So achieving consistency across your job descriptions is going to make things easier, like setting your salary bands and doing market research on your positions. If you've got simplified, consistent job descriptions, that's a very time-consuming task for the comp folks to have to normalize and get all those things in a consistent format so they can get some accurate data on market rates. You can use it to screen resumes. Again, beware of bias. There was an example back from 2018 where Amazon had piloted a resume screener, and it was based on their existing employees, most of whom were white males.
Right.
And so guess what the AI did? It selected the white males with white male sounding names, right? Somebody named Juan Ortiz or Ariana Olinka might not have made the cut just because of their name. So they canned that pretty quickly. But that's the example of bias. Another example why you always need, what is it?
A human.
There you go. Okay. You can use.
Well, let me ask you this, Tom. I know that I keep interrupting you. I just have to ask before I forget. A lot of smaller companies are paying Indeed and Monster and whatever it happens to be, those different job boards, and they're incorporating AI into their technology. So yes, we're dependent on them monitoring and making sure it's not biased and all that stuff. But why should we use ChatGPT if they're using ChatGPT and that process of taking everything and just finding the best resume for you based on their AI?
Well, a lot of companies do use Indeed. A lot of companies also have their own internal and external job boards.
Right. I'm just wondering for those that are not necessarily advertising or collecting resumes on a job board or through their own website and have to go through resumes, is that maybe something that they would not use ChatGPT for, but they would use it for other things, such as creating that job description to make, again, their life easier so they can focus on other tasks?
Okay. I think we're getting into more of a strategic discussion,
Okay.
This is so.
Step 2. I'll have you back.
Okay, thanks. But you do need to have some policy set up. Your company, or you have to have some kind of objective around what do you want to accomplish with this.
Yes.
What is considered acceptable use, what is considered unacceptable use. Going back to things like IP, but also, do we really want the AI to be conducting assessments?
I love that goal of just having a goal. What do we want to do by using this product? By incorporating this task, what are we hoping to accomplish? And I think that is really the epicenter of everything, and it really is going to guide you.
Yep.
Awesome.
And that's a great segue into this. We already jumped into the ChatGPT demo, so I got ahead of myself. But really, you need to ask yourself, what kinds of questions do you want to ask it? What do you want to create? For who? Or for whom, excuse me, or why? So I went and asked ChatGPT. You've probably heard the term prompt engineer, right?
Yes.
So I asked ChatGPT what would be some good pointers for for somebody writing a prompt or a question. Now, this is not the complete list. I added some things. Number 3, for example, this was adapted from ChatGPT 4.0. The actual list is about 10, and it's more detailed. Again, that'll be in the packet that or the file that goes out. But this is the list that I came up with based on what I got out of ChatGPT. Consider your audience. Who is it
Okay.
you're doing this for? You have to
Yes.
provide
Yes.
some
Absolutely.
context to ChatGPT around these are I'm looking to attract and retain college graduates or high school graduates or people without a degree. If depending on the makeup of your workforce, decide what kind of tone you want to use. It's going to be more formal, informal. Use clear language. Keep it real simple. You don't have to use big words. Issue obfuscation, which means keep it simple, right? Don't use big words. Keep it brief. Be succinct. Be on guard for potential bias. And the last part, get feedback on the output once you've taken a look at it and tinkered it and made it your own. And then iterate, or reiterate. Refine the question and ask it again. It can be a little bit time consuming, but I guarantee you're going to save hours for every minute that you spend with ChatGPT.
Let me ask you this. Rudolph asked a wonderful question. Can you use the when you're entering everything in and you're looking at 1 through 8 right there? Can you tell ChatGPT from the data it's collecting to use the internet and be restricted to preferred sources or only certain sources?
You can specify. You can also specify. One thing I just realized I forgot to include here. You can ask ChatGPT to act in a certain capacity, act as a seasoned recruiter for experienced hires at the executive level. Right? You can be that specific. You can say, please collect information only from these sources, or exclude these sources, sources you don't want to include.
I hope that answers your question, Rudolph, because I'm like pretty amazed by that. So instead of just saying what I want, you can also tell them I want this, but I don't want that.
Sure.
And that's awesome.
It's a bit like the Google prompts used to. Well, I think they still work. This and or not that.
Yes, exactly.
The Boolean logic applies. So prompting pointers. Again, there will be more detail here in the file that you'll get. So what's next? So before we get into that, I want to make sure have we cleared any questions. I know we've got about 20 minutes left. I've just got a couple more remarks, but see if there are any questions.
I think we've answered a lot of questions, and we have wonderful suggestions on the movies and how to, the screenplay.
Actually, I hope I can see those because I'm very interested to see what people had to say.
My question is, how is ChatGPT or any of these other sources different from Google or different from maybe from an HR standpoint, SHRM website? If I know I can go to the SHRM website and get the information I need in an HR standpoint, why would I entertain putting all this work and effort into using ChatGPT?
Why not?
Oh.
If you can get to compare, to get a second opinion. And the doctor tells you you've got 24 hours to live. Well, okay, I want to talk to somebody else. Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Always get a second opinion from a doctor.
Right. So if it's something serious, if you've got the time, I think it's worth it. Period.
Okay. Awesome.
So, and again, it's why not? It's there. It's available. It's ubiquitous. A lot of things, for the most part, are free right now.
Yes.
The difference between Google, I was laughing. Nowadays, I used to love Google because it was very simple. Nowadays, you ask it for something and you have to wade through sponsored answers, and sometimes you get tricked into thinking, oh, this is what I look for, and then they want your credit card, and it's just go back, get out of this. I don't want this.
Right. Okay. And then sometimes the most useful stuff is on page 7.
Exactly.
And it takes you forever to get to page 7, and ChatGPT is going to kind of come through all of those things and just get you the bits and pieces you want.
There used to be a joke that the best place to hide something on the internet was on the second page of a Google search.
There you go.
No longer true, unfortunately. But so, and it may be a matter of time before they start figuring out how to monetize this through ads. I don't know, but I'm hoping we don't see that. So,
have you heard anything about monetizing any of these options yet?
It goes back to some of the questions I was asking before. A lot of money's gone into this. I'm not sure how, right now we've got a lot of gold miners running around, and NVIDIA's selling a boatload of shovels and pickaxes. I don't think this is a bubble, but I think how people are going to achieve a return on investment on this, I think there's a way, because I'm an optimist. But I just don't know what that is yet.
Okay. Figured I'd ask.
So this slide worked better with the animations, which I took out, but will Gen AI wipe out humans? No, probably not. The good news is if it decides to wipe us all out, we'll never see it coming any more than a Native American would have anticipated being killed by a musket by a European. We'll be gone before we realize it. So,
so is this something that our children or grandchildren will have to really worry about?
We'll be living in sewers and and foraging for survival. I don't think so. I kind of doubt that. There are a lot of smart people who know more about this than I do, and they are divided on the subject. There's some people say it's catastrophizing, it's never going to happen. Other people are saying, there's actually a doomsday project, which is anticipating the AI becoming sentient and a la Skynet, deciding to wipe us out. My attitude is, why would it bother? That would be like me going out into my backyard and looking for an anthill and stomping on it. If I was an AI, I would probably find better things to do with my time.
I love that analogy. Going in your backyard, stamping on an anthill. I love that.
Why would I bother if I was, so anyway, that's my view. But will AI take my job? No, probably not. But here's the thing, right? This guy, Eric Burns, I always stumble on his name. Eric at Stanford University said, and this also attributable to somebody else, I think, AI won't replace managers, but managers who use AI will replace those who don't. Again, that goes back to my original, what I told you originally why I got interested in this stuff, because for the time being, right now, it has the ability to really augment your ability to do your job. It's an augmentation. It's an enhancement. It will enable you to do more things faster and better if you use it correctly. Will it replace you eventually? I doubt that. Again, human in the loop. Obviously, some jobs are going to change. Some will change drastically. Others won't change as much. But you'll always.
But when we're talking about change, we're talking about job change. I mean, your job descriptions have however many bullets. And isn't AI maybe only taking, I don't know, a quarter to half of those bullets and transferring them to AI, and you still have half to a quarter bullets, and you can kind of add more bullets and do something else.
You can do some other stuff. So a la, what Josh Bersin or David Ulrich has talked about, where you move up the value chain, right? So I don't have to deal with all this transactional yucky stuff anymore, like answering the same freaking question 24 times a day, right? I get to move up from the transactional short term up to the longer term people focused activities, strategy. Even if I don't know how to spell that, I better learn, because that's the direction we need to head.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good.
Bear in mind, a while back, you might remember the Segway was going to change how people got around. There were committees formed in metropolitan areas around the country to try to plan out their grids to accommodate these vehicles. What we got were these scooters. So here's Julian, another one of my assistants, my research assistants created this using Midjourney. Did a nice job on it. I love this illustration. And this was just a photo I picked off of the internet, but I have credited the guy, Ted Goldberg, who took the picture. The lesson is tech doesn't always work out the way we expect it to. And there's something called Amara's Law, which you can look up. It's also described in some of the additional materials.
Okay.
And again, going back to what I was talking about before, some people won't be affected or perform jobs that AI can't be leveraged economically. They're going to be enabled to be more strategic, higher value work by using Gen AI to get their jobs done more quickly. They may be forced to move to a different job or even change careers, like me, as a result of GAI, or they may just elect not to participate. You know what? I know this is the way of the future. It's not for me. I'll be in the back making copies.
There you go.
Or coffee or whatever it is. Again,
I love that we still have options. At this point, there's still options for us as society to pick and choose what we want to do with it.
Yep. Okay, just a little past quarter of the hour. I want to be quick and finish up, see if there are any last minute questions. So keep in mind, you got to keep an eye on bias. Make sure that your responses, what you're using, and what you render from what you've gotten is accurate. Safeguard your IP. Respect the IP of others. I think there's going to be an emphasis on critical reasoning. One of the things that makes the hair stand on my back of my neck stand up is studies show. I twitch a little because I start to ask, well, what studies? Which studies? How many studies? How many subjects were in those studies? What were what were the conclusions of those studies? You need to ask questions. You need to exercise critical reasoning. And BOLO for skill atrophy. Going back to our friend the calculator, if you've ever been in a smaller, maybe a mom and pop store, dealing with a clerk, and God forbid, you give them an extra nickel so they can give you $1 back, they kind of short circuit. Not, I'm crossing up my analogies, but people have lost, I know I have lost some of the ability to do basic math.
It's funny that you say that, Tom, because as soon as you brought out the calculator, that is the first thing that I thought of, is giving somebody an extra nickel to get that $1 back. That's exactly what I was thinking. So it's very different than it used to be. Absolutely.
Bolo, by the way, it's a term, be on the lookout. So that's for people who aren't familiar with that term, that acronym.
Rudolph suggests that Elon Musk has proposed a significant number of jobs in this that are service oriented will be done by AI and robotics. What is your feeling on that?
They've already had, I forget what it's called, Flippy or something. There's a robot that can flip burgers. So yes. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, on the one hand, it's really hard to staff those jobs. There's huge turnover. It's not really well paying. So if your aspiration is to be a fry cook, I'd suggest maybe you raise the bar, aim a little higher. But it cuts both ways, right? I think in the service industry there's opportunity. How it can be done, again, going back to that point of being done economically. Is the cost of installing all these robots at every Wendy's around the country worth it, or versus just dealing with a 50 or 100% turnover? I don't know.
I think that Rudolph and you have very valid points where you have 4 bullets and you can choose to embrace it, you can choose to ignore it, you can choose to do half and half, and we're seeing society go to that half and half, so to speak. Well, not yet. It's like, a quarter and 3/4, but it's getting there, and you can choose what you're going to embrace and what you are just going to kind of like, la, 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 and ignore, so to speak, until it gets to that point. Yeah, I know. Scary.
So, my parting thoughts. HR now more than ever. When I was out at the HR Tech Conference, I go out just about every year out in Las Vegas. Everybody was talking about AI, and there's a lot of excitement. But I think, COVID in a weird way positioned us as a function to do things that we hadn't really even thought of. There was this enormous challenge, and we rose to it. Here comes another one. And I think COVID kind of prepared us in a way of what we had to deal with during COVID. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. It is where everybody's starting off the starting line at basically the same point. It's an entry level opportunity. That's another way to describe it. So there's tremendous potential here for anybody who's willing to put in the work, do the research, go to training, get studied up on this stuff. There are a million different ways it can be used. And it may not even be in HR. If you've got another interest that you've really always wanted to pursue, maybe now is the time using AI. I don't know. Do not accord any deference to the machine. It may seem authoritative, but it's not. All right. Next point, again, human in the loop. All the time, every time. Skills atrophy, we talked about that a little bit. Critical reasoning is, well, critical. And sometimes the old ways are best, right? You don't need to break out a spreadsheet or ask AI what's the square root of pi. Well, maybe in that example you do, but you get my drift. Sometimes the old ways and abacus are just a piece of paper and a pencil. They will satisfy the need. So you don't rush out to get AI to do stupid AI tricks. So I've said about that. Jobs that will be impacted. This is an extra slide I got in here someplace. Sorry about that. I just jumped. Excuse me. This is all I jumped to the end for some reason. So questions.
Do we have any questions? I put in some links in the chat for getting on ChatGPT, but also some free learning to learn a little bit more about AI and how to use it best. And that is pretty new because everyone was talking about AI and everyone was saying, hey, you got to do this, but nobody knew how to do it. And finally, teachers and universities are starting to recognize that somebody needs to teach people how to do this. And that is a pretty big deal. LinkedIn has embraced teaching and skill up. We talk about hiring for skills and not hiring for degrees. And that's one of those things. And this is a perfect way for you to be able to skill up in AI without leaving your home. You can do it right on your computer.
That's a great point, Christine. And it just brings to mind I should probably include some other sources. So LinkedIn has provided free training. Free.
Yes.
Free, F-R-E-E, free. It means it costs you nothing. So is Google. Google's providing training because there's so much demand. I think 80% of hiring managers are now looking for AI somewhere on somebody's resume, right?
Yes. So it doesn't matter if you're a high-level person or entry-level or what, but they want to see AI on there, some kind of AI skills.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any of the other educational platforms, Coursera.
Coursera.
I'm blocking on some of the others. Shoot, but they also have they're offering certifications now in AI. So it's well worth it. And then you go further up the scale, and MIT has a mini degree in AI. This guy Scott Galloway at NYU is offering a mini MBA or mini degree in AI. So there's no shortage of opportunities. You can ask AI, what kinds of opportunities out there for free, which is the best. And it'll render you, again, you got to be careful what you get, right? But here are some newsletters that I subscribe to. Gartner is a really good source. They run some excellent seminars. Those are usually free. Of course, they want you to sign up to be a client, but generally they're very worthwhile. Superhuman is another good one. These are very broad in their approach and not specific to AI. I'm sorry, HR. One of the books here by Ben Eubanks, you can find published in 2022, which is old news by now, but I think that's a good book that's focused on HR. A couple of these others, Max Tegmark, very interesting book. He goes all the way into outer space. He gets pretty far afield, but it's a really good read, intelligently written, and not too hard to digest.
Okay, I love that. I love that. I know that there's again so much that we could spend so much time, like hours and hours, through AI and what it has to offer and all the things that you can do. But just the short conversations that Tom and I had were all about, we've seen articles about resumes and job descriptions. And if you're not using it for that, then you should be, because everyone's doing that in HR. But you can take it a step further and use it for things like performance evaluations. Who knew? Learning and development, who knew? All
Who knew?
these things that you're already doing on a daily basis, put it into ChatGPT and see what it says so that you can enhance what you're already doing or make it a little bit easier for yourself by using such a wonderful program.
I don't know if we've got any Oracle customers in the audience, but they made a big impression on me at HR Tech. They have AI built into their platform, Fusion. Specifically for performance evaluations, it can help you write a goal just with the click of the buttons when I'm trying to write out. I mean, how much time think about it. How much time do you spend on writing up goals, or even worse, writing up appraisals? It can help you wordsmith. Again, you got to be careful, and you have to make it your own, human in the loop. But really impressive functionality they've built into the product, and it's right there for what it's worth.
It's worth the time to play around with it and just find out some more information. Yeah. David asks, you spoke of the generic tools available to everyone. How the HR ERPs have AI built into them? How is that? How do you see the ERPs in like Workday impacting HR?
Okay, so Workday, I've got a question mark a little bit. Maybe I was talking to the wrong people out at HR Tech. They insist that it's built in. I don't want to talk badly about Workday. I love Workday. I think it's a great product. I think the whole gestalt, the whole thing that Workday put together, being native in the cloud, and I fell in love with it back in 2014. That being said, I remain to be convinced. I'll put it that way. Or on the other end,
I think that nothing is perfect. There's no you at the top and then you're done and you can't do anything better or improve in any respect, whether it's a person or a system. And so Workday might be at the top of the range, but there's always going to be a little bit of room that they can enhance and make things better.
Sure.
And that might be one of those places.
And that's one of the things I love about Workday, because back then they were doing 3 updates a year. Then they slowed down to 2. But I just thought that, well, anyway, I could go on for days about Workday as well.
I gotcha.
And we're just about out of time. So here's my email. Here's my LinkedIn. If you want, just and if Max or Julian, if you're on the line, if you could just plug those into the chat. Happy to take any questions if you want to make connections. If you have any follow-up questions, again, I'll try to get back to anybody who did ask a question that we didn't get to today. But I want to thank you all for your time, and I hope it was useful.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate you sharing everything with us, because that was huge, and that's very helpful for HR, people that are focused on those specific questions. And nothing like going to somebody that actually knows HR folks to be able to say what HR folks need to do. So this is a really big deal for us, and I thank you
Thank you, Christine, for having me. It's
creating these slides, coming out today, sharing this information. And we have some wonderful comments in the chat box thanking you as well, and promises to definitely reach out. So look for that full message coming your way.
Very good. Stay cool, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.